JayPing here, checking in live, man. RespectMyRegion.com. We're back on another episode of the RMR Podcast. Today is our 106th official episode. Our journey today brought to you guys by Seedless Media, the cannabis industry's premier marketing agency for retailers and brands who want to focus on SEO, Google Ads, programmatic, all the good marketing services you guys need. They're a full service group. They got your back. Today, we're joined by a very special guest. We've got the CEO of Monko, Washington D.C.'s, I don't know if it's the first vertically integrated group, but it's definitely the first luxury retailer I heard of and the first vertical cannabis operation I've also heard of there in D.C. We've got Terrence White. Good morning, Terrence. How you living, brother?
Good morning. How are you?
Man, I'm doing great, man. It's a blessing to be here in Los Angeles today, and I'm really excited to chat with you and familiarize myself with the Washington D.C. cannabis culture there. That's an area that I was just telling you, nobody across the country has any idea what's going on there because we're all focused on ourselves, right? So yeah. I'm excited to learn a little bit about your background today and get familiar with Monko and Pleasant Hill, your guys' flower brand. So let's jump right in, shall we?
Absolutely. Let's go.
Do it. You've done a lot of these, so we don't need to make it all bells and whistles here, man. We just got to have a conversation. So Terrence, talk to me a little bit about what you do at Monko and what the brand is all about, because obviously people have no clue beyond what I just said.
Well, so Monko came about during COVID. DC back in 2014 passed the I-71 bill, which was a gifting bill, and you might have heard of that. But when COVID happened, I was in the real estate business and had the opportunity. I'm a returned citizen. So while I was in prison, cannabis kind of stuck to me because a former teammate and a good friend of mine was in prison for cannabis and doing 78 months. And I was on a 42-month sentence. And I was like, yo, this is crazy. So me and him got to chopping it up, and it just stuck in my mind. And when I came back to DC in 2015, it was something in my review. And in 2020, when the world changed with COVID, it gave me the opportunity to sit down and write a business plan. I wanted to take the stigma and stitch off of cannabis, make it luxury in terms of a retailer, but also in terms of the way that the experience was, because I've been in so many dispensaries before, and I was like, yo, this is crazy. There's no customer service. Right. The products are good, but they don't explain them properly. So I wanted to upgrade that. So I came up with Monko, which means lover of monkey. And monkey was called in the Black communities in Appalachia, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, was called monkey. So Black folks would call marijuana monkey. So I got the name Monko derived off that. And
shout out the horrific culture that our country has sometimes.
Absolutely.
Let's not gloss over that fact. That is absolutely not okay, but you are turning it into a positive.
Yeah. And so wanted to have some heritage and culture, because cannabis has always been about culture and this lineage, and it goes back before Christ, Keith, the ancient Asian empires and all of that type stuff. So we can relate this back hundreds of years, even thousands of years, but wanted to put some respect on the name and not just another weed store, marijuana dispensary. I wanted to make sure that it stood for something. And, when we first started, our tagline was ignite your curiosity, because we had to ignite people's curiosity what Monko was in terms of not only the product, the customer service, social equity, justice, all the things we do, the flower to the people movement that we have. And then also wanted to bridge and make alliances with the community, because the legacy market is so strong here, and the culture was so strong that we had to build our own lane in terms of the product, the pricing, and just relationships, the lineage behind it. Yeah. And so that's where we are today. October 20th will be 2 years that, the dispensary here is open, and, we've made some great strides. I've served as the chairman of the I-71 committee to take us from unlicensed to licensed. And it's been a lot of challenges, but it's been rewarding as well to work for the people, with the people, by the people.
It's powerful when you think about, you said, you spent 30 years somewhere and you become part of the community, right? Just by investing time, energy, in some cases money if you're a business operator in the cities, right? And all that time, and you think about all these faces you've seen, all these conversations you've had, all these other business owners you've met. What have you noticed has changed in your local community in the last, decade, roughly, right? Since cannabis has gone legal, right? And we're talking medically legal, right?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest change is the East Coast accepting cannabis. The West Coast, you guys are 30 years in front of us. When the cannabis boom left Kentucky and Arkansas and went west, and people, the Golden Triangle and people started to really, Woodstock and all the other things that, Coachella, all the things that brought the culture of cannabis strong out west. The East Coast was still in a fog where it was accepted, but it was also, you had to be on the down low, in terms of that. It's always been a huge black market here in terms of that. But just the culture of everyday politicians and the policies and all the other changes that come with medical, the whole client patient.
There's a dynamic between clients and patients and this retail pharmacy element that had to be
exactly. And what it had to do is you were playing connect the dots like you were a kid. You had to connect the dots so people that could understand why policy was different than politics, and why everything was so important, that all of them were equally as important. But the most thing was not losing sight on what's the most important thing was the patient.
Yeah.
And I think that where we are now is we're still trying to figure it out, not only in DC, but on the East Coast, of how to connect these dots, how to, in DC, biggest challenge is that we're medical. We can't be recreational because we have a rider that's prohibiting us from being recreational from the U.S. Congress. One congressman is blocking us. His name is Andy Harris. So as we continue to fight this war, like you said, most people don't know about DC. Well, I'm here to tell you about what's going on in the District of Columbia.
Come on, man. 99% of Americans would still say that place is a state.
Well, it's not a state; it's a territory.
It's got a whole different set of rules,
and it abides by what Congress says for it. So, DC is fighting the 51st state right now, but it's been, again, challenges. And when I look at this, I got in this business. Everybody got in thinking it was going to be lucrative, and you find out there's a lot of money spent. You make a lot of money, but you spend a lot of money in order to continue to keep the ship floating. And I think the biggest thing right now is for us, we went from igniting our curiosity to luxury with a purpose. And that luxury with a purpose tagline is about making alliances, building alliances with different communities. Whether
luxury with a purpose.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes. And, and that goes to building relationships with different communities, where it's the QTB community, whether it's people of color, social equity, social justice. We build alliances across the board, and every community is important because everybody now, cannabis is accepted. Gen Z has made cannabis more acceptable now than any other time in our history. And so we have to take what is giving to us, especially in DC, and make the most out of it.
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest thing. Just continue to build, alliances. And Monko has done that. I think we're in Mount Vernon Triangle. First, it was to build a base, to let the community know that we were there for them, to support on every level. And then it was to the community, to make sure that we work with people of color, returned citizens, And then with the I-71, making sure that we touch other stores or dispensaries in the city to help them attain their goals. So it's been, again, a
So
lot of
you're not only blazing a path and creating it for yourself, but a big part of what you're doing, because you were one of the first, is helping other people come along the way and creating that path for them. You're clear.
Absolutely.
You're Marshawn Lynching him, man. You got the team on your back, bro. You guys are 2 years of you guys going through the hurdles. I hear these consultants and I hear people speak at these panels across the country, Terrence, about how hard it is to navigate 50 sets of rules for these MSOs. They're not even right when they're saying that statement. It's 51. They're in
Yes.
Washington, D.C., and that's not even a state. It's got its own set of special things that you had to figure out. Think of it like this. Any other state with legal cannabis, their playbook for coming online, that shit don't even apply to you.
No, it doesn't.
Doesn't even
Because
apply to you.
it changes. Emergency legislation changes like a revolving door.
Oh, my
And
God.
and so what you got to do is learn find out who the players are and who the GMs are. It's actually playing the game and
Wow.
how we're going to be part of it. And then with me, part of me taking the chairmanship of I-71 because I needed a table. I needed a seat at the table to
Yeah.
help.
You have to find a way to get your voice heard.
Exactly, and implement changes and to help with the stitch and stigma, because so many people are, this is Washington D.C. It's politics at its best. It's in the back door.
That's literally there. It's
Yeah,
the
exactly.
politics at McDonald's, at the grocery store, at the gas
It's
station,
everywhere.
at the park.
Everywhere, and politics is big. And when you have that type of thing, you got to understand, how can I bring policy but also understand, letting people know, understand I'm a business operator, bringing that dimension to it so that you can see both sides of the coin, because a lot of times people can't see but one side of the coin.
Absolutely.
And when it does not relate to them, they don't care.
You got to
So
cross over into their enemy lines and be
yep,
able to communicate the way that they communicate.
absolutely. And then the other thing is that you got to continue to educate people.
Yeah.
On the whens, the whys, and the hows. Why is cannabis, needed? You have to ask the same questions. What, when, how, if. You got to make
If we can understand each other at a higher level, we can start to close the gap between certain things and certain people.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only just close the gap, but you're closing gaps of older politicians who have been numb to cannabis, and who's to say, like, why do we need this and why do we need that?
Maybe
But
they're a little slower to change.
change is slow. But you got to think about this. DC has 800,000 people that live in the city of DC. DC is only 8.8 square miles, brother. And
Holy cow.
but we see over 22 million people last year that visit from a tourist standpoint. So there's a different dynamic here altogether.
Wow.
And so understanding that when I started this, and it started with the aesthetics of the store. I'm in Mount Vernon Triangle, and I wanted to take the feel of the neighborhood and put it inside the store. So if you walked into a luxury condo building or apartment building, you got the same thing when you walked in Monko.
We used to use this tagline back in 2016 when I was marketing at a dispensary in Bud Tendon. We used to call it affordable luxury.
Yes.
And the concept was taken from attainable luxury.
Yes.
We wanted to make higher end experiences more accessible to people, thus giving them the ability to feel more respected, feel more included, feel like their life was better for the 10 minutes they were in our location, right? And I think that's something that's really powerful, is being able to help amplify what cannabis already does to amplify other people's life, is taking it a step further, right? Especially with that kind of experience. Now, I'll use the time here in a little bit. I'm going to ask you another question, but I'll use the time in a little bit to pull up your website so we can screen share it in a little bit. I'll pull that up in a second, everybody. But I wanted to pivot to a second. You also have a vertical. You have a cultivation there as well,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah. We cultivate and manufacture. We're working on the manufacturing side right now. The cultivation side it's coming, but we started a brand called Pleasant Hill Wellness. We're actually just behind a brand called Bliss, which is a 10 milligram, 100 milligram pack edible, and then we're coming out with a 2 gram disposable vape,
Oh
which
wow.
is called Blossom, which is going to be pretty solid, very very high end. The rig is great. 5 different settings on a disposable on a 2 gram. But
Ooh.
but competing with the turns and then on the other side Caminos and Wows and those type things. We wanted to be in the same frame as them, but also be affordable. And you nailed it before, as is that I want this to be contagious when it comes to luxury. When you walk in Louis Vuitton, Gucci, any other designer store, it's a contagious thing. You're used to it. You're used to a level of service, a level of product, and that's what I want cannabis to be in this. And so what we're doing is we're building brand, we're building lineage, but we're also making it affordable, where people still get that experience, they still get that education, they get that product where, like you coughing right now, where you knowing that hey, what I'm getting is good shit.
Yes.
And that's what I always wanted it to be about. It was never about Terrence. It's about Monko. It's about Pleasant Hill. And all those names mean something to me. I grew up in rural North Carolina in a community called Pleasant Hill. Was a group of
Oh
black.
wow. So this is Pleasant Hill. It's named after where you're from.
Yeah, so I grew up in New Bern, North Carolina, but a community called Pleasant Hill. But it was a bunch of group of black farmers who my grandfather was a hog farmer, and my neighbor was
Pleasant Hill sounds like a J. Cole album.
hey, Pleasant Hill is from the Ville, so that's not too far away. But as they say in North Carolina, I'm from down east, what they call the 2-5, and
Okay.
it was a 252 area code.
That's awesome.
But I've been in DC 30 years,
Yeah.
so I've seen, and as a real estate person who came here working and turned into real estate, I've seen gentrification. I've seen all the things that the city had to offer. Was part of that. So I understand. I was one of the first when gentrification. So I'm one of the first with cannabis. I understand the changes and how to align myself, but again, it's a different age, it's a different time, and you have to understand. Unlike real estate, the trees were already matured and things were already happening. With cannabis, it's not, because you don't have the institution banking behind it. You don't have, when you don't have certain things to help the tree become mature, and you got to keep feeding it and watering it yourself and hoping that the rain will come. It's a different ball game.
Absolutely. I mean, your methods for doing business are severely restricted and heavily impacted just by the way things are legislated and set up in 50 states over here, and in the and in your one situation as well.
Absolutely, because what goes on in Maryland is not going on in DC.
Yep.
But if you
You
go,
can't even call the same investors that have experience in these other places because they
you
wouldn't
can't.
have any familiarity with your place.
I mean, you can, but you have to educate them, and you got to remember you can be across the street in Maryland, and DC is right across is on the other side.
That's crazy. I was
So
just looking at the maps here for your guys' location. I'm actually going to go ahead and take the opportunity to share the screen here. Um, you guys are literally next to the White House. How far is this distance here, Terrence?
so I'm about maybe 2 miles from the White House.
Ooh, that's crazy. You are 2 miles from the White
Not
House.
even that. Probably. You see the White House. I'm on. I'm
You are
on.
in this little triangle
I'm
area
on.
thing.
I'm
I
on.
see.
I'm on 4th and K. The White House is on 16th in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
So we're about a mile and a half from the White House.
And then I see you guys are roughly the same distance to the United States Capitol, the Supreme Court. Like,
Yeah.
you guys are right there in the absolute thick of people that run the United States of America. How cool is that is where we're at in society? We literally have the United States politicians, their families, and the local people that don't have anything to do with that, all consuming. Now, over the years, I've heard that DC is a rough place. Most metropolitan cities are rough places these days. The economy, inflation, the gap between people with money and people that don't have it has continued to spread. Right? You know,
Yeah.
what are you noticing from a local community standpoint in terms of being in an area that's historically, we'll just say, tougher, and how that correlates to purchasing habits in those areas? Are you still seeing and I'll quote the marketing, the CEO of Steve yesterday said that there's, I believe, a $70 to $77 order size in general across America.
So I'm
What kind of
different.
things are you seeing
I'm,
from in the
I'm
orders that
different.
you report?
My average card is $125.
Okay, so this is a perfect example. That's
Yeah.
maybe potentially the exact
Yeah.
opposite, or 50.
Right. So my average card is $125, but my footsteps are down.
Okay.
And because I'm dealing with a smaller pool, and I'm
Mm,
also dealing where DC is community based. So you gotta continue to build your brand across different communities.
yep. Yep.
Also, with Maryland coming on board, Maryland's been one of the most profitable states once recreational happened since the laws changed. And Maryland's been very, so we're down about 15-20% in terms of that. So
Since they went legal and the traffic has
exactly,
changed, the flow.
because people were driving into the city
Yep.
because they didn't need a card. They could just come in, pop their ID, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Now, with Maryland being recreation, no one's going to drive by it, no matter what the product is. They're not going to drive by 4 or 5 dispensaries and have to deal with parking and all that. So people have, changed their appetites there. So we're faced those challenges, but we've been pretty blessed in terms of average cart from day one. And that goes to the experience, the product, and just the notoriety of the branding of the store, um,
Absolutely.
or the dispensary itself. But I think we have a lot more work to do in terms of how to just increase our footsteps, especially on the down market. And with it being an election year, I think a lot of people are starting to feel that pinch too, because every top of every news cycle, I would be dumb and not to say the first thing they talk about is the economy and people
Yeah.
not being able to afford. And the biggest portion of America they're talking about is Gen Z. The people, and those are your biggest spenders because those are your biggest smokers 9 times out of 10. So we're facing some challenges there, but we're working through them.
I'm confident you guys are going to be able to power through, because when when you bring an experience and then you have the intentionality of the customer service, the last part is the good product, which
Yeah,
that problem can always get solved, right?
yeah,
And so it's like over time it gets there. Now, everybody watching, I want to take another time again. We're going to screen share here. I want to bring up their Google profile. I'm real big on SEO here. I wanted just to show you guys the store. We're talking luxury in Washington, D.C. So here's a view of outside, right?
yeah.
Beautiful location. And then as we go through some of these images, here's one of the inside in the initial entry area. What a cool looking logo, number one, like what you were saying earlier about the monkeys. And then wow, what a beautiful, is that stone?
Yeah, that stone, again, where I went through this during COVID, man, and we had to, we exploded our budget by about $350,000 because,
Yeah, there it is.
but there again, we wanted to make the location as luxury as possible, and it sticks out. It's a beautiful
Ooh, look at
location.
that, man. What a beautiful view right there, right up against that luxury high rise.
Yeah.
Living
So
that living building right there, the condos, and then man, beautiful paint job. That Monko there stands out so strong. I might just have to watch that again. Hold on one second. Ooh, we look at this, you guys, man. If you guys are in Washington D.C., you guys need to pull up, man. There's absolutely no excuse not to if you live there. Absolutely. Now, is there the ability for people from other states to go to these kinds of dispensaries there? Can we clarify some myths right now?
yeah, I mean, what DC is we're you can get a 1-day medical license in DC. It's a $10, I think it's a $30 fee, but whatever. But you can get a 1 day or a license, or I think it's up to 7 days now, and I could be wrong about that. But as long as you're 21 and older, you can definitely partake in the city. What's the beauty thing about this is like we have, like I said, we got over 22 million tourists came last year to
Yeah.
the
It's busy. It's definitely busy and active.
It's always a conference or something going on. And again, with Monko, again, it's luxury with a purpose.
Yep.
And us identifying not only the customer, but identifying just the brand, building the brand itself. And that's what I'm doing right now. And that's why when I got the opportunity to be on with you, Joey, I wanted it's just expanding the brand and just letting people know, because in the long term, most stores that have survived 5-6 years, that's when they decide to get out, because they build that brand. And
Absolutely.
And so with me, becoming an MSO, I mean, vertically integrated, and looking to become an MSO. I'm just taking it and doing it right, one step
Absolutely.
at a time, one brick at a time mentality.
I was taught by somebody that worked for a very, very high-end marketing agency somehow, some way, that was attached to one of the big entrepreneurs that so many people, millions and millions of followers know, right?
Right.
And he painted the picture like this to me, Terrence. You're building a pier, and you only got to build one pillar of that pier at a time. Otherwise, you're going to fall in the water, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to make sure that each pillar, both sides, to put the board in one at a time, that you can't skip steps. Otherwise, you're going to sink in. And if you can't swim, you're going to drown. And that's why 99% of businesses fail, or whatever the key statistic is in the first 5 years, is they just start skipping steps and things start happening and pressures, and it causes you to go off balance, and then you do things over here, you do stuff over here. We got to keep focused. And so big respect to what you've been able to accomplish, and how you've been able to analyze the space and make moves. That is a beautiful location. Now, the key thing here that I want to ask before we get you on out of here is, for those of us across America that might be coming to Washington, D.C., for those 22 million tourists that are going there, obviously luxury with a purpose is the tagline and is what you're executing. But what do you truly want people to know about the products and the experience there, so that way they can feel welcome and ultimately decide, see if, you can compete to see if they're going to come to your store?
Well, the luxury of the purpose thing is more than just the product. It's the stores, the experience, but it's also our purpose and how we branch and make alliances with the community. And one thing I'm proud about is how we've been able to help veterans and dealing with PTSD, anxiety, how we've been able to help the whole gay movement and all their anxieties of life, building those relationships, but then return citizens and people of color, who Black and brown like myself.
Yep.
That's just one of the things, and that's luxury of the purpose. And then there's a T-shirt in my store that says "Flower to the People," and that's who we are. We are the people. And that's what brings people in, because when you're here visiting, it's our products and the experience is going to be good. I just told you I'm $125 a cart. My UPT is unit per transactions is almost 3. So we're
people are buying stuff and they're liking what they're getting.
Exactly. The next step is how do we build those alliances, and how do our retention rate right now is 67%.
Crazy. Yeah, that's solid.
So if I get you in the store 7 times out of 10, you're coming back.
Yeah.
So right now we're doing those things, but the biggest thing right now is just growing the tent, letting people know about the brand and expanding the brand. And it's the products, the experience, but most of all is how do we do the work? How do we get involved in the communities and saying that, hey, Monko is just more than a dispensary. We want to be a flagship.
That's something I continue hearing consistently throughout our conversation is community. The fact that you've been involved in various things, you're making sure to be a part of stuff, whether you live it or understand it or are a part of it, you're making sure to be a part of it and to find a way to support it. And I really respect that and appreciate that as somebody who is always looking for things. I'm always
Well, and you got to remember, I'm a returned citizen. I spent 18 and a half months in the federal system. And I can tell you is that it's a challenge bouncing back into this level, right? But I thank God for the relationships, the education that I have, and just it's just God himself for giving me these opportunities, because a lot of returned citizens don't get the opportunity that I've been privileged to have. And I'm thankful for that. So I give him all the thanks and the praise, because if without him I'm nothing. So these opportunities, and people believing in me, because as you talked about early in our conversation, is getting the investors to believe in me.
Yeah.
Right. Because they believed in me in all the challenges that Monko had. They had to believe in me.
You have proven that it's able to happen and be done, and at the highest of levels.
And you got to think about this. Most dispensaries don't make money till year 3.
Yeah. First
2 years it's solid. You know what I'm saying? And I get it, especially men in a down year. So, we're fighting the fight, and continue to build, a brand and continue to build Monko, and not from a legacy, but until a flagship, a pillar of the community, because what I want is to take, the first thing I said, to take the stitch and stigma. Cannabis has been misrepresented for too long. And it gives Monko's given us the opportunity to represent not only cannabis, but the brand in the District of Columbia in a very great way.
Everybody here, man, I hope you guys are picking up the game. I hope you guys are feeling as inspired as I am, man, because if there's one thing that this conversation with Terrence has shown me, is that resiliency is everything, and consistency is huge, and never giving up. And as they always say, it's about how you bounce back, right?
Absolutely.
And so I just want to say, you've given me chills over here thinking about, the success, looking at that store and just realizing, like, man, like, people always like, man, like, my life sucks. It can literally get worse. You can spend 18 months in a federal penitentiary and have to get out and figure it all out all over again. And
you know what, man, again, the relation, if I didn't have the family network and I didn't have the relationship network, I could be one of those guys that's out here, finding my way, paving my way. I've been home this year, 2011, 13 years. And, I've been blessed, but that's all credit to God. And that's, he's given me the underdog mentality. He's given me the can't be left behind mentality. But most of all, he's given me the strength to endure and to fight these challenges. And that's the biggest thing. And I couldn't have done none of this without, my team and the support, because again, it's not about Terrence.
Once people started believing in the overall goal and the objective and the mission, it became bigger than you. But it took vision. It took relatability. It took people passion. It took these people caring about people other than themselves.
Well, I mean, and from the onset, and people knowing that, hey, when we got in this, we were a legacy store. So they took a gamble on, are we going to get a license?
Yeah.
Are you going to do what you said you're going to do? And if I can't be a man of my word, then I don't have anything. And as a businessman, some don't have any morals. I do. I know what federal prison looks like. I know what reinventing myself looks like. I know what finding myself looks like, because at 18 and a half months, I had the opportunity to spend time with me to get to reinvent, to find that desire, that passion again, and get to know me again. And most of all, build a great relationship with God again, because I tell you, there was a lot of dark days in prison.
Yeah.
Being away from your family, I have 2 kids at the time. They were younger, they're adults now. But it was challenging, not only for them, for me, but mostly for them. And you know, my late mother was my biggest inspiration because every day I would get a letter from her. If it didn't say nothing else, but keep your head up. So, you know, when somebody believes in you um, at a higher level than you do, even more than what you do, that ain't a blessing, brother.
Yeah.
And
Unmatchable.
you know, and we've all been through our challenges. And you know, I appreciate this joy, this opportunity to share with your community and your audience. But it's a privilege just to be, you know, being able to be on podcasts across the country. And I, you know, shout out to Zoe and Mike. You know, they're my PR people and they keep me busy. But they know that I'm about to work. You know,
Absolutely.
yeah. So that's it.
I appreciate you sharing your story and, you know, helping people understand, you know, the gravity of your situation and what your life and what you've been through and the challenges of the business and the industry there and how it's different. Just really appreciate all of your perspective and helping us understand, you know, the trials and tribulations that each of us goes through on our life as a human first, and obviously as a cannabis entrepreneur second, right? Today, everybody, I've been joined by the CEO of Monko, Washington D.C.'s luxury cannabis retailer. They also have a brand called Pleasant Hill for their flower products, so make sure you guys check that out. Terrence, where can the people reach out, get a hold of you if they've got any questions, maybe if they want to invest and help you expand and those kinds of things?
Well, you can reach me at twhite@monko.co. We're located right here in the district at 444 K Street Northwest. Um, you know, I'm on it. I'm not a big Instagram person, but those are the best ways to get in contact with me. I'm always available, and not only from the investment side, but you know, from the coaching side. You know, there's a lot of people out here that, especially with social equity, that get in this game and they don't
Yes.
understand. They don't
All of you
understand.
guys, reach out if you have questions, man. Use Terrence as a resource to learn and ask and be able to potentially get involved in the space in a similar way.
Absolutely. And Joey, keep doing the great work that you're doing, man, and keep asking the questions and digging and bringing, you know, people on from different regions of the country because it's always enlightening. Like I said, California, you guys are, you know, the torch has already been lit there. So, you know, we're trying to get to that point here on the East Coast.
Man, Washington, D.C. is on the rise, you guys. And so for those of you that are interested or happen to be out there or looking to get involved or get in that space, be sure to reach out to my guy, Terrence. Man, Monko, D.C. in the building. Hey, y'all, this episode is brought to you guys by Seedless Media. Tap in if you guys need any retail cannabis marketing. Again, these are my guys, data-driven, and, man, good at making money. Terrence, we're going to get you on out of here. For those of you all watching, be sure to like, follow, subscribe. You can talk some shit about me, but definitely don't talk shit about Terrence because he's way too inspirational.